Welcome, leaders. Let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we're dissecting the incredible rise and the eventual cultural collapse of Ray Dalio's Bridgewater. We're going to pull back the curtain to reveal exactly what happens when a brilliant, optimized business system is forcefully applied to human psychology. Look, as senior executives, we spend a massive amount of our time thinking about systems, right? Optimization, scaling our success. But this case study we're looking at today, it's a profound warning about the absolute limits of those systems. Our executive briefing today covers 5 key areas: decomposing complex risk, the machine over the profit, systematizing the human soul, the cost of radical transparency, and finally, the rebirth beyond the founder.
All right, part 1, decomposing complex risk.
So picture this, it's 1980, and we get this brilliant lesson in business mechanics that transforms Dalio from running a tiny 2-man consultancy out of a brownstone into becoming a major institutional money manager. It all revolves around the launch of the McDonald's Chicken McNugget. McDonald's wanted to launch this new product, but poultry prices were just way too volatile for them to guarantee a fixed menu price across their 3,000 restaurants. Well, Dalio saw what literally no one else did. He realized that chicken isn't just a chicken. It's corn, plus soy meal, plus a farmer's profit margin. By hedging the specific feed inputs of a chicken on the futures market, he completely absorbed that volatility. McDonald's locked in their fixed price, and the McNugget became a massive, undeniable success. For any leader, this is a total masterclass in taking massive, complex risks and breaking them down into manageable component parts.
Moving right along to part 2, the machine over the profit.
Now, while his systemic business rules were genuinely revolutionary, Dalio, as an executive, as a self-proclaimed prophet, was about to learn a very hard lesson about unchecked hubris. Look at how spectacularly wrong his 1982 prediction was. He goes on national television and just confidently predicts a catastrophic economic depression. But what actually happened? The market rallied into the longest bull run in American history. Because he had stubbornly tied his entire portfolio to this one gut prediction, he lost his clients' money, he had to fire all his employees, and get this, he actually had to borrow $4,000 from his dad just to survive. It's a stark, painful reminder that in leadership, being the smartest person in the room and being right are definitely not the same thing.
Okay, so what does he do next? He makes an incredibly smart pivot. Vowing to completely remove his own ego and human error from the equation, Dalio partnered with Bob Prince. They took his trading rules and packaged them into 2 distinct, highly automated machines. First, a defensive product called the All-Weather Portfolio, which was designed to equalize risk across asset classes so conservative pensions could actually sleep at night. And second, an offensive product called Pure Alpha, governed purely by mechanical if-then rules to generate aggressive wealth. Actually, scratch that, it's more like he literally replaced his gut with an algorithm.
And here is the truly fascinating part. For decades, Dalio would publicly and incorrectly predict market crashes. He'd write these intense memos and go on television warning of blow-off tops and deflationary implosions. But his actual funds almost never lost money. Why? Because the unemotional, automated system simply ignored his public doomsday predictions and just quietly followed the data. The machine was literally making billions while the prophet was losing his credibility. Which brings us to part 3, systematizing the human soul. You see, massive success has a funny way of tricking leaders into thinking their frameworks apply universally to everything. After finally getting a public prediction right during the 2008 financial crisis, where, by the way, he personally made $780 million, Dalio decided his rules shouldn't just apply to global markets. He decided they should apply to people. So the crucial question we as leaders must ask ourselves right here is this: what happens when you pivot from optimizing commodity pricing to forcing a rigid, unfeeling system onto your own employees? Can you really decompose and hedge a human being the exact same way you do corn and soy meal? Well, his answer was a doctrine called radical transparency. This was an entire culture of total surveillance built on his core philosophy that pain plus reflection equals progress. Think about this for a second. Every single meeting was recorded. Employees were constantly being rated by their colleagues on dozens of personality attributes in real time, using company-issued iPads. He essentially started treating his staff like measurable data inputs that could be endlessly optimized through constant public scrutiny. He genuinely thought he was building a flawless truth-telling machine, but in reality, he was systematizing humiliation. And that leads us to part 4, the cost of radical transparency. As you might guess, this culture inevitably built up to a catastrophic collapse. The human toll of this hyper-optimized system was just devastating. A prime example of this is the treatment of Katina Stefanova, a highly competent executive who happened to be pregnant at the time. In a recorded meeting, she was verbally abused by Dalio until her lip started to quiver, and then she was relentlessly attacked just for showing that human emotion. She completely broke down. But the nightmare didn't end there. The tape of her breakdown was deceptively edited to make Dalio look like this wise, calm mentor while making Stefanova look unstable. And then this edited video was mandated as a strict hiring filter. Any candidate coming in who showed sympathy for her while watching the video was automatically rejected. The system wasn't selecting for talent anymore. It was literally selecting for a lack of empathy.
So what happened to the actual work? Well, while employees were utterly consumed by taking mandatory personality tests, rating each other on iPads all day, and maintaining this weird cult of personality around the founder, actual performance suffered. The supposedly flawless Pure Alpha Fund actually underperformed simple index funds for 7 out of the next 11 years in the 2010s. The entire focus of the company had shifted away from understanding global markets to just surviving internal, recorded trials and memorizing Dalio's principles.
The ultimate cost of this toxic environment was a massive succession vacuum. Just look at this staggering timeline of brilliant, top-tier executives who were brought in to replace Dalio. Britt Harris lasted exactly 5 months. John Rubinstein, the legendary engineer who built the iPod, lasted 10 months before deciding the place operated like a cult. Eileen Murray left with a $100 million lawsuit. And Larry Culp, who had successfully ran Danaher for 14 years, was fired on the spot. These were world-class leaders who were rapidly chewed up and spat out by a system that was seemingly designed to prove that absolutely no one could ever truly replace the founder. Finally, Part 5, the rebirth beyond the founder. But all eras must eventually come to a close. Finally, in October 2022, the 40-year reign ended, and it provides us with our most actionable leadership lesson yet. When Dalio finally handed control over to a new CEO, Nir Bardea, the changes were instantaneous and profound. The company immediately dismantled the surveillance culture. They destroyed the recordings, they scrapped those mandatory principles tests, they completely, quietly took apart the machinery of radical transparency. They basically just allowed their investment professionals to sit down and do their jobs without the constant looming threat of public humiliation and iPad ratings. And the results? Absolutely immediate. Freed from the founder's ego, the endless surveillance, and the daily distraction, Bridgewater's Pure Alpha Fund surged 18% by October 2022. And keep in mind, this was during a brutal global bear market with a war in Ukraine and soaring inflation. The fund performed so well under the new Dalio-free investment committee that they actually had to close the fund to new money because of overwhelming demand. It just goes to show, when you finally remove a leader's ego from the process, incredible things happen to performance. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. I want you to really look at your own organization today. Are your processes, your culture, and your performance metrics truly empowering your people to succeed? Or are you falling into the ego trap of confusing your personal brilliance with a sustainable corporate culture? A true legacy is a system that thrives long after the founder leaves the room. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.